This is the Business of Apps podcast, bringing you actionable insights from the leaders of the global app industry and the world's fastest growing apps. You can find more app news, data and analysis over at businessofapps.com.
Welcome to the Business of Apps podcast. On this show, we invite app industry professionals to cover various topics. We promise to do our best to keep it both insightful but brief. In this episode, we have Natalie Rozenblat, Senior Performance Marketing Consultant, and Isabella Zulli, Senior Graphic Designer at Phiture. Natalie, Isabella, welcome to the Business of Apps podcast.
Hey, yes, thanks for having us. Super excited to be here speaking with you today.
Thanks so much for having us today. I'm super excited to be here. I've been listening to Business of Apps for a while, so this is really cool to be on this podcast.
All right. So, welcome to 2022. Happy New Year, everybody. We are starting this, I want to say season, but this is not a TV show. But anyway, we're starting 2022 with an episode where we have not one, but two guests. And the topic on the table is the impact of creativity on paid social. But let me set the stage first. All right. Every once in a while, I like to begin an episode with a question to the audience. I know you cannot answer me right away. This is just hypothetical. So what do you do every morning? You brush your teeth. At least I hope so. Have your breakfast. Take a shower. Am I missing something? Yes. You check your Instagram and TikTok feed. Why do you do it? This is not the question for this time or this episode. Right now, my point is that sometimes in those feeds, one of the ads grabs your attention. Why? To answer this question, I've invited Natalie and Isabella. But before we'll be diving into the world of ad creatives and what they or not difference they can make for paid social ads, let's talk about you both. Please tell us about yourself and what brought you to the app marketing field.
So in my senior year of university, Gabe Quachi had reached out to me, who was the founder of Incipia, a mobile growth consultancy. And they were looking for, it's just somebody to help them with some client work. Started working with them and just right away really fell into the rhythm of the fast-paced environment that you have at an agency, working with many different app verticals. And then before I knew it, it was pretty much 3 years that I was there and really liked the work. Like I said, it was really fun and was learning a lot, working with really smart people who were super passionate about the app space. And then made my way over to Phiture over in Berlin and have been getting that same sense of passion and drive from all of the Phiture team and working with more clients across Europe and getting more diversity there. So that's kind of how I got into it and why I'm staying in it.
Great. I used to be part of a marketing agency, and I think I still remember the spirit of the teamwork. What about you, Isabella?
Yeah, so I'm Bella, and as mentioned, I'm a senior graphic designer at Phiture. I've been in the app marketing world for about 3 years now. I kind of just fell into it, actually. I was trained at university. I studied interior architecture. And I was working in Sydney after university. I had this dream of moving to Berlin and working in design here. So I'd just been kind of searching for design roles, and this job came up at an app marketing agency, not Phiture, but another one here in Berlin called Customlytics. And so I just decided to kind of switch fields a little bit and start working in graphic design full time. And then, started working for Phiture a bit over a year ago now.
Wow, Sydney, the city of the world famous opera theater.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that comes to my mind when I think about Sydney. Okay, now let's get to the topic on the table. So let's face it, in our daily lives, we see a bunch of ads. We've just stopped noticing that those images are actually advertising for somebody. And they're just kind of blended in one stream. We're trying to pass that stream out of our conscious. But every once in a while, like I said at the beginning, some of those ads just pop up and grab our attention. It can be a piece of user-generated content or an ad, actual ad. So why some of those images capture our attention based on your experience? So why it happens?
Yeah, typically ads that usually stop, like me personally, from scrolling, it's hitting me with some sense of humor, or it's getting me on some type of emotional level. And at Phiture, we evaluate ads based on what we call the PET model, which is a conversion model based on different persuasion, emotional, or trust tactics. Mm-hmm. And besides that, I mean, usually it's ads that are just really super creative and out of the box, something that you really haven't seen before, and they're eye-catching. And nowadays it's really about like grabbing attention within those first few seconds. I think like apps like TikTok and Instagram Reels, those like fast-paced videos that you can just scroll through have really diminished our like attention span. And so you're kind of accustomed to just moving quick, even on your Facebook news feed, and you can scroll through things that you don't really want to, look at or watch for more than a few seconds.
True.
So it has to really, be eye-catching. And other than that, I think it's more of a right timing thing. Like if you've been thinking about this product or this service recently, or it's something that you need that you don't have yet, or maybe it's better than a competitor, that's also how, it grabs your attention and how you get your users to convert.
So the closest the system to be able to read your mind, the better it is actually capable to deliver some ad that is relevant. Yes. I'm trying not to sound too spooky, and I like your attitude towards there's always unfortunately there are two ways how you can grab attention. It can be something that makes you laugh, or it may be something that enrage you. I really just hate the last option, and sometimes advertising can go this path when doesn't matter if it's just if it's something that's not positive, it's not funny, it's just scares you, but still grabs your attention and it delivers the click that advertising is for. That's not the way to go. Use your sense of humor, be creative, play on the positive side. That's my motto. Now, the next logical question for me would be, what would you suggest to marketers? What steps should they take to get one of those ads that will allow them to generate a lot of engagement and actually grab people's attention and introduce their app?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a process that we've really worked on developing at Phiture, and we refine it constantly. But we follow a set of around 6 steps to build kick-ass creatives. And we follow the first step as just really understanding who the audience is, what are the business needs, making sure we understand who the app users are. Then we look at historical creative performance. If we can already learn from what has been tested, what has worked, what hasn't worked, and we try to focus more on things that have worked, then that can give us a leg up to coming up with this next batch of creative ideas. And then we pair that with competitor research. So we try to find a lot of inspiration into things that, advertisers are doing that already is working. I think everybody pretty much takes this approach. Or we find things that we actually haven't tried yet. And then we still from time to time just try to find some wild card or concept that hasn't been done or tested before, but those are a bit more difficult to come up with. And then on the conversion tactic model, we incorporate the persuasion, emotion, and trust. Like, which one are we trying to convey in the idea? We try to incorporate as much user-generated content or influencer content as we can. We've definitely seen that this works really, really well. And, everybody's talking about this now, like making the ads look native, especially on TikTok and Snap, and even on Facebook now, YouTube. It's just somebody talking to the camera or like a real person, not the stock. So yeah, that's also a really important component. And then finally, we compile everything into a test tracker so that we can manage through all of their ideas and organize through when are we going to be testing, what are the results of the tests, and having kind of like a one-stop shop to track all the creative ideas.
Isabella, as a professional designer, can you add something, from a perspective of somebody who's actually putting together those models of graphics for ads? Do you have any, like your observations for what makes the ad, kind of popping out from the blending stream of advertising?
Yeah, I mean, as Natalie already mentioned, it's really about like standing out from the rest, which is why like that step 3 Natalie mentioned, where we're conducting competitor research and we're gathering inspiration. It's a really important stage for the design team to really spend a lot of time assessing what's already out there. Like, what are your competitors doing? What are your non-competitors doing? What ads are performing well that you've seen recently, and kind of looking at, everything that's happening in front of you and assessing what can we do better, what can we do next, and what can we do to kind of really push those boundaries. The best way to do this is generally like we find well-performing assets using influencers or user-generated content. It doesn't even have to be paying some really expensive celebrity. It can really just be, your team filming themselves using the app. If it's, if the app has a product where you can actually interact with it out in the real world, like, a car app, let's say, where you're, using an app to book a car, like a quick rent car, your team could also just go out and, film themselves interacting with the product. So it's like really like people want to see like how these apps are used in their real life. And I think this is the most engaging content, because the other thing is it also will start to blend with like these users' feeds, right? It'll start to more look like natural content that they would see in their feed from their friends. So, you're more likely to get those users to stop and actually watch your content if it's a bit more realistic.
So you're saying, so basically we're all fed up watching James Bond characters portraying on mega watches. We want real people to do the same thing, like the guy or girl you can see the next door. And this is how we can actually relate better that this is about you, not this huge gap between you and that guy on the screen, which just the celebrity who's been paid to advertise that product. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, depending on your audience, of course, celebrity influencers could be, can really generate, positive performance.
Right. Sure.
Depending on the experience, depending on the app, just getting your real users even to create content for you. Like I would recommend to not be afraid for apps to reach out to their own user base and, see if anyone who actually uses the app in their everyday life is interested in creating content and just speaking to the other people that use the app, because, we're all real people at the end of the day and we want to see real people using these apps.
That's for sure. Great. So are there any tools that may facilitate the process of generating high impactful ad creatives?
Yeah, so we use our research tools such as Sensor Tower, which basically it scrapes all the ad networks and aggregates all the data, and then it ranks the ads by advertiser. And so we really tend to utilize this during that third step that I mentioned, where we're, gathering that competitor research, we're gathering the inspiration. And basically we can use that tool to see what the competitors are doing. We can see what non-competitors are doing and what's really been working and what we haven't really done, what we haven't tried so far.
Great. So this is your source of inspiration. If you really like, sometimes, it's great that you can come up with ideas on your own and be creative, but there's always a limit how much creativity can be in your head because you're just one human being. The different ideas are being generated because people have different sets of the information that they had, the previous experience, different sense of humor, different taste, and preferences to certain colors, shapes, or just different way of presenting stuff. That's what that repository is really great and helpful for generating something new based on other people's experience.
Exactly. I mean, of course, as designers, we can also just, we're generating ideas all the time ourselves, but, we also like to be backed by a little bit of data, which is why we use tools such as that. But I would also not discount, we also just spend a lot of time, on our phones. I'm constantly looking for ads. I'm almost searching for ads these days on my Instagram or Facebook. I'm like going to the very end of the scrolling option and really forcing those ads to come up because, this is also a good way for us to see what else is out there.
That's right. You're hacking the system to get more ads from a professional perspective. That's a smart way of doing it.
I actually checked Instagram settings last week to see if there was a way to if there was an option to get more ads, because, for me, this is really interesting. There wasn't that option, unfortunately, but yeah.
Well, that's great. I think Instagram is happy because they believe you're watching more ads, and you're happy because you're getting more and more examples of different ideas. So it's a win-win.
Exactly.
Okay, so now let's dive in a little bit into psychology. There's always particular reason behind our actions. Even when we're completely spontaneous, there's something that drives the spontaneous action. So how does psychology may help us to come up with the net creative that will generate high engagement?
Yeah, absolutely. So for performance marketing campaigns, it's really important to delve into the mindset of our potential users. So we need to understand how they think, what makes them react, what's making them make these decisions. And so, as Natalie mentioned earlier, to help us understand this better, we use a framework called the PET model, which stands for Persuasion, Emotion, and Trust. It's actually a framework which was originally developed by a company called Human Factors International, and it was originally used to guide the development of high-quality user experiences, mostly like web-based experiences. So what we've done is we've kind of adapted that framework and that model to help our teams here at Phiture create those psychology-driven hypotheses to produce those more effective, fun, and engaging ads. So the model is basically made up of a bunch of different tactics which fall under those three categories. And, each of those tactics then have their own hypotheses for these different kind of psychology-driven effects. I can give you an example, actually. I think what we see regularly these days in a lot of ads, particularly on Instagram and Facebook, is they're usually using a tactic called a reward. So this is when users are usually offered an incentive to download the app. So it's usually, free delivery on a food app, a grocery delivery app. It could be discounted offers or even free trials. And these are things, instantly someone's like, okay, I'm getting something out of downloading the app. I'm getting to try it for free. I'm getting my first order delivered for free. And this is what, is a psychology tactic driven to trigger that person to make the download.
Natalie, can you add something on top of that?
Yeah, I mean, we are really trying to track this when we test it with the way that we name our ads. So from the ideation part of the creative workshop where we're sitting together and we're saying, okay, here's all the 10 ads we're going to test this, or the 10 ideas we're going to test this month in ads. From there, we've actually implemented this whole naming convention on our ads where we have a Google sheet that the designers are going in and saying this ad is, reward. This ad is building persuasion with knowledge of results. And then what we're working on is creative level reporting to then aggregate all of that data and use it to kind of then understand a bit more what conversion tactics work best for each of the clients that we're working with, or for different channels or for different geos. So it's all in the works right now, but That's been a really big endeavor on between both teams, and coming up with the ideas is, I think, the initial challenging part, and then from there, just kind of constantly coming up with new ideas, because we focus most of our time and effort on net new graphic design concepts, or I don't know, concepts within the app or app features that we haven't tested yet. And at some point you kind of do feel like you're running out of things. So it's just constantly trying to see, can we target a new conversion tactic? Can we try some other design style that we haven't tried yet? And
So even though psychology, the reason why a particular ad may engage a person should be pretty much universal across the board, but there's always these cultural differences. When you're creating an ad for an application somewhere in Europe, Latin America, Asia, can you think of any example, just to briefly in general, when you had to think harder and you couldn't figure it out, what ad should look like for any region, perhaps any problem to come up with something really engaging for Chinese market or any market at all?
Yeah, localization is a huge part of our role. For any of our clients, we're usually operating in, up to 20, 25 markets, and we're producing ads for all those markets. So part of our design process is always localization, and it's not just about translating the captions that you're using in your creatives. It's really about looking at every little thing. It's making sure the app UI is also localized to that market. If you're advertising a travel app, for example, the locations you're showing in the app UI, you might want to change those to be destinations that the country you're targeting, those people are realistically actually wanting to travel to those places. And it could be also about, the images or the video footage you're using, making sure that, locations are recognizable to the people in that market. Also, if you're showing people in images or video assets, again, making sure that culturally the people you're showing in that footage is also appropriate to the market you're advertising in. And we see good results when we do kind of hyper localize, as we call it, when we're localizing every single element of an ad, and less so when we're just producing one ad that we're releasing to all markets.
Got it. Now, testing is something that people agree should be part of any app marketing campaign, but it doesn't mean that all app marketers are confident about how to be effective at running tests for ad creatives. Perhaps you can give any suggestions, tips?
Yeah, part of what we talked about with the creative naming convention is super important, because then when you actually do test it, you can read the performance a bit better. So definitely biggest tip would be to apply some sort of standard naming convention and try to avoid numbers like variant 1 or variant 2, because in 3 to 6 months from now, you're not going to really remember what that is. So try to be super specific. But there's definitely a lot of different ways to test ad creatives, and the preference always differs by marketer. And I guess to preface this, we don't always follow the channel best practices to a T. So for instance, on Google, you have 20 videos that are recommended, 20 images, 1 campaign per geo. And on Facebook, if you're on AAA or on dynamic creative ad sets, then they recommend to upload all available slots. But what we actually find is when we're working with smaller budgets, then the ad spend is spread really thin. And what ends up happening is just, let's say you launch an ad group with 5 new ads, then you are, or with 20 ads in this case, with 5, whatever the number is, majority of the spend usually only falls to a few, I don't know, not even 10% of whatever quantity you're putting into. So we try to then get a bit hacky with it. And if we launch, let's say 5 new assets in an ad group and only 2 of them are picking up, we'll maybe temporarily pause the 2 after a week or so to see if the other 3 will get ad spend if those don't get ad spend, then, or yeah, maybe they're getting some spend, but just not enough learnings, then we will push them into a separate ad set, which try maybe a few different like thumbnail, text copy iterations. And if that still doesn't work, then we just move on to the next test. And I think it's important to call out, like, you can always switch up your way of testing. So from time to time, maybe you're trying a different test method just to see if there's a better, faster way to get learnings. The algorithms are also always changing. So I think it's good to kind of always reevaluate processes that maybe somebody else is doing that you haven't tried yet, or that you did before they stopped working, maybe trying it again a few months down the line. That's typically the approach that we take.
Got you. Right now, putting together Google Play and Apple Store, doing testing for both. Do you find right now, when the testing tools are available for iOS as well, are they pretty much on par, or there's still a gap in terms of testing? It's still easier and more efficient to work on the Google side?
Yeah, definitely still way more efficient and quicker on Google. iOS is a lot slower, and I mean, you're getting clicks, but beyond that, it's really hard to measure. And we're finding that, yeah, high click-through rate's good, but it doesn't always necessarily correlate with becoming a top spending ad or your best performing creative. So it's a bit tough to only rely on that. And you just need really large budgets on iOS to really learn anything. And at the rate of like creative concept testing that you need on paid social, it's really difficult. So pushing it to Android is the easiest.
So finally, can you share some of that creatives that impressed you recently, you both? Something that made you pause and smile?
Yeah, we can share a couple of examples. One is a video ad I saw from Gorillas, which is that grocery delivering app. It was an ad that they used for their launch in London. And not only was it really about kind of the aesthetic that captured my attention, it was kind of, using these really, I would say it's kind of, I've seen a bit of a trend recently in the animation style. It's kind of very like a lot of different content flashing in and out, really cool kind of graphics, really cool treatment of the text. But it was also really about the localization of the asset, which caught my attention. Like all the video footage that they used, it was showcasing locations in London, like the popular parks, the tube stations and things like that. And on top of that, they used grime music, like UK rap music as well in the background. So I really felt that they did a really nice job in like targeting that user demographic that they're looking for, which I think their main target audience would probably be, more of the younger generation. And I think they did a really nice job of doing that. And, this is our recommendation on localization. As I mentioned before, that, if you're an app that offers a service in a specific location, it's really important that you do localize your ads to those places in order to properly, target your desired users. And another example I can share is on the UGC and influencer side. So, of course, as we mentioned, it's hugely popular right now and very engaging content. And we do tend to see some best performance results when we use those types of ads. So there was an ad recently for an app called Acorns, which is a financial app that I think it helps users save and invest their money. And they had an ad with Dwayne Johnson, so The Rock, talking about the app. And, as we said, it's not always necessary to use such a big name, but I have to say, like, for them, I'm sure having such a big name promoting their app, would have been quite a big draw card for some of their users.
You got to get the app. You don't mess with The Rock. That's for sure.
Yeah.
The app industry is vast. To navigate this space, you need a directory to look up suppliers and partners, and you need to know who are the best. Visit our marketplace directory at businessofapps.com/marketplace/podcast. And now, back to the show.
We've covered the major topic on the table, and I just have a few more questions that I ask every guest on this show, because one of my goals is not only covering the specific topic, giving people educational tips and tricks, but letting them know my guests a little bit better. These are just a quick questions. So each of those questions to you both, in whatever order you prefer. So what smartphone do you have now? Have you been switching between iOS to Android and back, or just staying one side consistently?
I've been iOS I guess besides my first phone, but for a long time, I like Apple.
Yeah, what about you?
I also have an iPhone 11 right now, and I've been using iOS for years now, and I don't think I would really go back to Android. But my very first phones when I was a teenager were all Android phones, and then I think it was maybe the iPhone, 4 or 5 was my first experience with iOS, and haven't gone back.
All right. What about did you have the smartphone? Sorry, no, I wouldn't call it a smartphone. Feature phone, those flip phones before the era of smartphones.
Oh yeah, my first phone was a lavender-colored Motorola Razr flip phone. And I love that thing so much. And I'm not kidding you, I flipped it so hard one day that it snapped in half, and I was devastated. And so I bought another lavender Motorola Razr straight after that. I really loved that phone.
Yeah, speaking of the Motorola Razr, it reminds me of the Matrix Resurrections I've just watched recently. What about you, Natalie?
Yeah, mine was also the Razr, and it was a navy one though. And I remember I got it. My parents gave it to me. I was like really sick, and they surprised me with it. And then I had texting for like 6 months to a year, and none of us knew. And then when we found out, I was like, wow, I could have gone this whole time, and flipping the phone, texting all my friends. But it was really cool. I remember it was great. The flip phones were fun.
Yeah,
but I don't know if I could go back.
I'm actually glad though that companies like Apple are making colored phones now again, because this is what I always had a colored phone as a teenager, and I really loved that. So I think it's cool that phones have gone back into the colored sphere rather than just being black.
I'm too scared to wear my phone without a case and for everyone to see the color. So I guess to me it doesn't matter anymore. But I always see the people without their backs on the phone, or like a case on the phone, and they have some cool colors that they brought in.
Yeah, there's always the question, should I put the case that it's not transparent or transparent? Should I keep the original color, or can I use the different color with the case? I want to switch to the next question, which is hypothetically, what may happen with any of us. You've left your smartphone home. What would be the most missing feature for you when you're out?
For me,
I guess the ability to text or call people. I feel like that's what I use my phone most for these days. I mean, maybe if I was really bored and I was on the train or something, then maybe I'd probably miss Instagram, because I just like mindlessly scroll through that whenever I'm bored.
What about you, Natalie?
Yeah, I would say also texting or calling, but aside from that, like maps, I use my maps app like every day, so I would be pretty lost without it. But maybe that's more
like searching for like the U-Bahn or S-Bahn, like
exactly.
I would have I probably have no idea.
Yeah, I my phone was stolen like my first few months in Berlin, and like thankfully I was in like a station where all I had to do was just get back on the train to get back home. But if it was somewhere in the city, like I would have been so lost on how to get back.
The smartphone has become part of our brain. That's not an exaggeration anymore. That's just the extended memory. For better or worse, I mean, there's no way you can, have a phone that just unstallable. I guess, I don't know, chain the phone to yourself, like what you can do, or it should be really tiny, like sitting behind your ear somewhere. Like we should wait for 10, 15 years, I guess, till that moment. Speaking of Phiture and the features that are not on our smartphones right now, is there something that is missing for you both on your smartphone? Software, hardware, better battery, whatever.
I think, I don't know, I feel like battery is always eventually an issue. But yeah, I kind of, I know that there's some companies that are making like these new flip smartphones. I'm super curious about them, but I'm just not willing to switch from Apple, unfortunately, to try them. But if Apple are down, then I'd be super keen to give this a go.
And you, Natalie?
I don't know. I don't have
so you're pretty good with what you have.
Good with, yeah, I'm content with that. Don't need more technology, I think.
All right. Before I let you both go, how can people get in touch with you and get more information about what you do, the company?
People could either just reach out to myself or Natalie on on LinkedIn, or you can also get in touch with Phiture via our website. I believe it's with Phiture.com.
All right. Terrific. Thank you for coming and being on our podcast. Thank you, Isabella and Natalie. Thanks.
Thank you
very much.
Thanks. Bye-bye. And that was Natalie Rozenblat, Senior Performance Marketing Consultant, and Isabella Zulli, Senior Graphic Designer at Phiture. To listen to more episodes, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts. Just search for Business of Apps, and you will find us easily. We release episodes on Mondays, so subscribe, and you'll be able to get new episodes on your smartphone, tablet, or computer if you're still using computer to listen to podcasts. And please don't forget to leave us a review and comment on iTunes. It is highly appreciated. And all episodes will also be available on businessapps.com. Thank you for listening. See you next week. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Business of Apps podcast. For more, head on over to businessofapps.com.